Welcome to the My Voice to Story podcast. I'm your host, Cielo. I'm a television media storyteller turned entrepreneur. My Voice to Story is an interview podcast for young adults who struggle with human anxieties and finding comfort in their experiences. In each episode, I conduct unfiltered interviews with extraordinary individuals from top business executives to everyday folks about the obstacles they've encountered in their lives and how they rise above them. Listen in for tangible tips and inspiring stories that will help you overcome your anxieties and thrive in the face of adversity. So let's get started. Hi guys. Before we get to the episode today, I just want to say if you guys are enjoying our podcast and want to contribute to our mission of sharing stories to empower people from all walks of life, I sincerely ask you guys to consider becoming a BluntyW hero. The BluntyW Hero Fund is an initiative that we recently created, which consists of a recurring small donation every month. The money from the fund will be used to cover podcast production expenses, and most importantly, our charity work with grassroots organizations focused on education. In exchange of your monthly donation, you will get a lot of perks. Some of those perks are you'll get access to all our new releases and also a free lifetime subscription to the BluntyW publication. So please consider joining today. Head to BluntyW.com/support us or just click on the link that will be available in the description of the episode. Your support will truly help our mission grow so we can inspire people through our stories and spread positivity around the world. Hi guys, this is Cielo. Thank you for tuning in to our third episode of the My Voice to Story Talks. This week, I have a bonus interview that I conducted a couple of months ago with two amazing women that are disrupting Hollywood. If you haven't seen the film, you should definitely check it out because it's the first Hollywood action film in history with a brown female lead. The film tells the story of Rani of Jhansi, a historical icon and freedom fighter in India who at 24 was a general leading her people into battle against the British Empire in 1857. Devika is the star of the film, and she also co-wrote the script of the Warrior Queen of Jhansi along with her mother, Swati, who is the director and main producer of the film. I'm very excited to share this interview with all of you because Swati and Devika get very real about the sacrifices and effort it took to make this film into a reality. Plus, they tell us how they're pushing the boundaries to fix one of the biggest problems in Hollywood, women representation in lead roles. The video interview will be available very soon at our BluntyW.com website. In the meantime, enjoy the interview through this platform. Hi, Swati and Devika. Thank you for being here with me today.
Thank you.
Swati, my first question is for you. Tell us a little bit about the character Brannie and why did you decide to make this heroic figure into a film?
I grew up in India, and as a little girl, I did hear the name of the Rani constantly, but it was usually when I was not listening to my mother, and every time I challenged her or challenged anything around me, she said, "Who do you think you are, the Rani of Jhansi?" So I said, "Who is this character who I like, who's constantly questioning?" And then I saw every girl in India was dressing in a fancy dress as Rani of Jhansi. And yet as I grew, no one knew too much about her except that, oh, she was this great warrior. And then it began and ended with a poem. And I said, well, there must be a movie. And then I found there wasn't a movie. And I said, they really should, especially growing up in India. You know, there was much more violence against women, which I used to read on the news constantly, you know, murder and rape and whatnot, and it's worldwide, but seemed like a focus was on India. And I just would get really angry saying in a land like India where we have characters like this young woman who gave up her life at 29 to make a difference in the country, how can women not be completely empowered? And there are a lot of women, but I said everyone should be like the Rani, with a sword out and just cut off everyone's head who, you know, doesn't allow them to breathe. And what is their birthright? And I said, you know what, I should make a film. And I should write a script and make a film. And I said, I'll find a producer. I couldn't, so I produced it. I couldn't find somebody to direct it because they had to know too much. So, you know, the process became of self-doing a lot of things. And as you know, with filmmaking, about the Rani, she's young, and that's why I wanted a message to the world. There is not an older woman who did it. It's a young girl, a young woman who did it, who didn't whine and say, I don't have a father helping me or a brother or a husband. She did it herself. And I said, wow, I can use her as the example for every woman worldwide to get up and say, I can do it. She did it. So if they have 1% of the Rani, I felt it would be an inspiration, which is why I wanted to share her story, not check boxes saying, is it commercially viable? Is it something I'll get a distributor, exhibitor? You know, the world has become a strange place. And I'm just doing my mission, which is making a story about this amazing woman to share with other women to say, here's your strength, you can do it, let's make a difference. That's all I looked at.
Absolutely. I personally think that it's so important for women of all walks of life to feel represented in mainstream media. And it doesn't happen very often. So we need to keep pushing boundaries to make it happen. Devika, my next question is for you. I want to talk about your character, Rani. What do you think is so special about her, and how did you prepare for this role?
I think there's so much that's special about her, but in the same way that there's so much that's special about every woman out there. And what makes her special in a way is that she isn't special. And she wasn't born into royalty, and everything she had, she created for herself, and she worked very hard to get to where she was and to fight for her country and her people. And whether it was her mastery of archery or horseback riding or martial arts, those are things that you have to train in and you have to work hard in. And what I took away from the Rani is that anyone can do what they put their mind to, and if you really work tremendously hard, then you can achieve your goals. So she was very special in that she's an icon and she's a hero that really existed in 1858, who women can look up to and think, if she could do it, then so can I. And to prepare for the role, I had to do many things. So I had to speak 2 Indian languages, Hindi and Marathi as well.
Did you speak Marathi before?
Yes, yes,
okay.
But not, we were speaking very high-flown Indian dialects from the 19th century. So there was a lot of learning that had to go into doing that. It wasn't the native contemporary tongue of today. So that was something I had to work quite hard on. And then horseback riding, which I spent years doing, and martial arts as well. So it was very physically challenging of a role, but it was also emotionally taxing, and having to get the right accents for that time period and for that culture and part of India as well.
Let's talk now about the production of the film. How long did it take you to make this film, and what hurdles did you have to overcome to make it into a reality?
I think I only faced hurdles, which is why I feel I am so enriched at the end of this process that I almost feel like, again, I'm always doing non-profit and charity work. And one of the things I want to do is to tell any filmmaker or any young person out there, come talk to me. I'll tell you all the things that will go wrong that nobody will tell you. Not because they don't want to share it. People are politically correct. I'm not. So I would love to share with people all the things that would go wrong. I had 2 veterans who actually I didn't know from Adam, and they were very nice to give me some pointers on what would go wrong. So I do thank, Ian Smith, who's amazing and has made huge films like Mad Max, and Ashok Amritraj, who just as friends talked to me and said, look out for this, look out for this. If they hadn't told me, I would have probably never figured it out. But then there were so many things, obviously, being on the ground that went wrong. And then they went right because I actually had to, and so did Devika, me more, but we had to become like the Rani. Just as her battle that she went into battlefield, we were both battling against all odds. And the actor had to get involved because I was overwhelmed, and at some point I would say, hey, your family, look out for me. And so she was watching my back, I was watching her back, and we were, before we know, discussing everything that could go wrong in it and saying, we're having these issues, we're having that, let's fix it ourselves. And we were really fixing it. So from the climate, which obviously you can't fix, but we had Morocco shoots, which were in the desert in extreme cold at night. I had damp weather, very, very cold and damp in London, extreme heat over 110 degrees in Rajasthan in India. A very tight 8-week shoot because you have less budgets. How do you get budgets for a first-time director? And you're making a film on the first brown female actor. I mean, the fact is we made this film, and except for one critic, no one even has realized it, is pretty shocking. So if only one critic wrote saying, hey, and by the way, this is the first film with a superhero lead who is a brown woman, why has no one registered? Because it's an uncomfortable place. So it's uncomfortable, and so when you have that kind of a character, they're saying, do we want to distribute this kind of a movie? Who would want to fund it? No one wants to fund that because you don't want to be the first at anything. Humans are cattle, they like to follow. They're no leaders. So my message to everyone there, do what no one else is doing. It's going to be a struggle, but that's your dream that'll come true. So that was one of my challenges. No one wants to give money for it. They're saying, oh, it's firstly a woman-led? Oh, really? A superhero's woman? That too, she's a brown woman. All negatives in that you're a first-time director. Oh, oops. How are you going to know anything? How? Because I don't have the money, I'm able to make a movie, and being a historian in that background, because I know how to save money. I'm not taking fancy cars and Jaguars and going around town. We're trying to stay in simple hotels and putting all the money on the screen. So that was the smartness of having classical training in arts, to know how to budget. And budgeting was only done by us. We never relied on middlemen. And that really helped, because I realized with the kind of budgets I had, if I hire different people, I'm going to be flat broke because they all have agendas. And these were the challenges. So it put a lot of burden and extra time. But when you don't have a studio budget or a large budget, that's some of the things you have to do. And, we were taking help from people and friends who we trusted and saying that, could you tell us, if the budgets are correct? Let me know how I could save on this. Me going and using personal friends and saying that, can you give me a 50% off on the fort? And which I got. My line producer couldn't, because he was obviously making money on the side in India. So I had to give deals like, okay, you're hiring cars, I'm hiring cars. If yours are cheaper, I'll take them. But how come mine are so much cheaper? Because I have no middleman. Yeah. So all of this, you have to see that when you've got horses and elephants and all of that, if someone's going to add 4,000 extra on every one, you're going to have less money on the screen. Yeah. So these were my challenges of saving money, making sure I get top actors to act, and convince them. But fortunately, they didn't just come on. We had many choices. And the challenges were, after you make the film, is to get a distributor. And then when you get a distributor, then you have to make sure the exhibitor gives you the right hall and the cinema hall, and it's not in some far-off place that nobody can go to. Sure. And then within that, you have to make sure that, your PR budgets or whatever people are doing, because this society has become one of hand-holding. If it's not Marvel, no one wants to go. If it's something to do with a story like this, they say, oh, what's the catch in it? Now, if I'm going to put in a $20 million budget for PR, what would I do with making the film? These are independent films, so all people should realize challenges are not so much in a story or how it's told. Your critics are your challenge, because when they're really big critics, they don't take the time. They just say, oh, compared to Marvel, the production is less. They don't care to want to know, because if I was a good critic, the first thing I'd write is the first film with a brown female lead is a superhero.
Yes. Women representation in Hollywood. Honestly, I've been able to watch the film. I cried twice.
Oh,
such a wonderful movie.
I'm just so happy that so many women not just cried, they said she resonated with us. And that was actually the only thing I personally wanted is she's not Indian. She is every woman. She's black, brown, white, anything. And women have to realize that. It's her soul that has no boundaries, no culture, no caste, no creed, no religion. And the day we see that, that's when we're going to be a homogenous group to be able to take on the world. Until then, frankly, I think it's a huge challenge.
Yeah, now that you're talking about that, and I wanted to talk about the Hollywood problem. I actually just read at a UCLA Hollywood Diversity Report that it's interesting enough, last year, minorities accounted for majority of box office ticket sales. Films that actually have majority of minority cast center, they perform in really well box office. Yet we see 30% of women lead roles, and let's not even talk about minorities. It's about 9 to 10%. So what's going on? What needs to happen in Hollywood for them to realize the numbers are there? Why is it that we're not having more diversity in these films?
Would you like to, as an actor, answer that?
I get scripts a lot, and what I've seen now is that people are making an effort to write more roles for people of color to say that they've done that, and so that they're not submitting a script that doesn't have any minority people written into it. But what I've seen is that because we're now making such an effort to do that, the roles are even more stereotyped than they were before. Because back in the day, they used to be, okay, this is my co-worker, Bob, and in the casting process, they used to say, Bob can be any ethnic background, and then maybe they try to cast a minority, maybe they would not, it would end up not being. But now they'll say, this is my co-worker, some Indian name, right? And then there's a whole backstory as to why that person is Indian, and an explanation of their parents, and like they come to work with lunch every day that's Indian food and blah blah blah, and the identity of being Indian is so deeply tied into that character that it's now pronounced in a way that just is so that everyone's trying really hard to say, I'm not racist, like I wrote this character, where what we really should be doing is just writing characters the way we see them every day, where people we know have different skin colors. And we're not really there yet, and I think it's difficult at this point. Hollywood is definitely changing, but the people in positions of power are mainly Caucasian males, and when those are the taste makers, people enjoy. I mean, our movie, we tested it, and it tested very, very well.
94% to be precise.
With women, and it tested specifically even better with women of color. Now, we knew that, and I think it's very natural that when you see a version of yourself on screen, the story resonates with you perhaps a little bit more, right? But the movie did not test very well with Caucasian men, and something we learned is that over 80% of movie critics, so
Caucasian
taste makers in the industry are older Caucasian men. Now, there's nothing wrong with that, but there's just a natural proclivity towards content where you can see a version of yourself in that. And until there are people in a position of power who want to see themselves on screen, you won't have change happening that way. So it really needs to come from the top up, I think. And I mean, when I see a movie with Caucasian men, I'm often bored halfway through, right? They're just like many Caucasian men all the time, right? And it's not, there's nothing wrong. This is just how human beings are. At some point you want to feel something towards that person.
Spice it up or something.
Or no, it's just because I don't resonate with that. And that's fine, because that movie was probably not made with me in mind. Of course not. But there aren't a lot of movies that are made with me in mind, and there are a lot made with other people in mind. So I think it really has to do with the people who are consuming this content, and the louder and the more proactive women and women of color need to be about having content which has us in it, because no one else will create that content. Why would a Caucasian man want to create a story about a woman of color? It just doesn't, it's not something that they can even speak to as their experience.
I would add to that is critics are the tastemakers. So, you know, when you have a critic, good and bad, and everyone doesn't have to love your movie, but when one critic writes something and then he sends it to 9 newspapers, and then those 9 newspapers say, hey, he's a big name, we dare not contradict even if we like the film, so let's just repeat and regurgitate it because we need to be playing ball with everyone, we don't have the guts, we're spineless. Then you write the same, and then you put it on Rotten Tomatoes. Rotten Tomatoes says, oops, you don't know, the public doesn't know, but Rotten Tomatoes is owned by Fandango. So you buy your tickets like an idiot only on Fandango because you just want to click and not understand that Fandango is owned by Warner Brothers and it's owned by NBC. I'm just saying, why in this generation, when you're so good at the net, do you not find out that who is the supplier? So you are catering to the critic, who is also not just any critic. He has to be verified by Rotten Tomatoes, who is owned by Fandango, who is on... There's no transparency. So it's like me saying, I'm GE Capital, I own Moody's, you have to rate me. You think other companies are going to be rated? So why is it people, especially this generation, is not educated enough to find this out when you have the information at your fingertips? And my generation did not have anything, and yet we researched, we asked questions. I just want to ask the next generation that is it only what is fed to you? If the taxi all the time says a film, obviously that has a $150 million budget. So you're going to run towards something. Make choices for yourself. Don't say there are no films about brown women, because how many go to support them? They don't, because they're saying, let's go see Frozen instead. So never complain. My issue is, don't blame. Make the change. Don't complain, because where we are today is because we are to blame. It's not the white Caucasian male. We did not stop them. We are not putting out content. When it is out, we're saying, oh, what's it on Rotten Tomatoes? Audiences say 94, but you know, we don't care who the critics are. We're going to be led like cattle. We have no brain.
Yeah, that was actually going to be my next question about the press. What can we do to impose that change? Because it's not the executives
By not
only.
going to what critics think. Who are the critics? They don't know world history, and they're suddenly commenting on Indian history. I mean, can I comment on baseball if I've never seen it? I really don't think I should be writing about baseball. So when these critics are sitting in their wonderful Hollywood homes or wherever, can only talk about burgers and Pilates, they have no right to say that an Indian woman would not have been a warrior and pretty. I mean, I've had these comments, and they say, Jhansi or Jordan is the same thing. I grew up in India, Upper East Side, brought up 2 kids. I remember very clearly, I'm meant to be racist. They were wonderful at these top private schools, but they would say, oh my God, you're Indian, my babysitter's Indian as well. Do you speak the same language? Would you know her? She makes Indian curry. Conversation ended there. They're from Harvard and Yale. What happened? Is this the only limited knowledge? I studied in India. I can speak on many topics. So the society has to change. This whole thing of saying, you're from Harvard, so you're smart. Really? I don't think so. I think people have to question. If you go to a community college, you're smart. You didn't need your parents to write a check to Harvard and then say, was it endowment or not, and endowment helps a poor child. We have to stop being hypocritical in this country. Stop being politically correct. Reach out, make the change. And don't say we want immigrants when you're terrified. Because in this country, it was a land of immigrants. Everybody's an immigrant. And we have to stop being politically correct. That's the only thing. Though I don't like Trump, I say Trump is the little bad boy who has exposed the face of America. Because everything he says, a lot of people think. And that's why they put him in power. So he's the little boy who's naughty. They're saying, think it, but don't say it. You're exposing us. And I always say, ooh, the little child has come out.
I have to say, I have nothing against Caucasian men. I'm about to marry one.
Yeah, nor
in the
do I.
next couple of months. But it's just finding voices that aren't there yet.
But don't blame them. We have to make
I'm
the
not
change.
blaming anyone.
Not you, I'm saying we, as in we as a collective.
It's a collective.
You know, we as a collective, you know, you have to change them. You know, Hollywood should not be ruled by people, and I only say one name. Weinstein remained Weinstein, but really, I mean, everyone knew about him. They allowed it. Why did they allow it? Because it suited everyone. So we cannot really say no one knew. Everyone knew, men and women, and everyone looked the other way. And that's what they are continuing. So the change has to come from an industry saying, let us make the change. Because till they decide to be that and not say, oh, we're liberal. Do you know that they're less, when you said 9% is minorities, it is 4% Latino and less than 1% is brown. 2% is South Asian. So look at the population, you know, of India and Indians in this country, and they're all in film and arts. How come nobody is there? So you're naming 3 people, one Priyanka Chopra and one Mindy Kaling, and you're like struggling, let's find the women? How come they're not even 10? How come they're not 5? So it does say something. It's not that talent is lacking, there are no roles. Or it says, let's just put that typical nerdy role, you know, of the Indian with the heavy accent so that we can all laugh.
All these stereotypes, right, that are usually reinforced by Hollywood. But thank you so much for telling me about your thoughts. On a lighter note, our audience majority are college students. They're Gen Z, millennials, and a lot of the
College
times,
students now would be Gen Z, right?
Gen Z.
Like iGen.
yeah,
Oh, I'm lost
I
in
feel
all
so old. A lot of them want to break into the industry, right? They want to be filmmakers, and some of them right now are struggling with a lot of rejection, which is part of, I think, of every career. What piece of advice would you have to young people that right now are struggling?
To be open. There was one critic, a young girl, I think 19, who's done a 101 at Emory. She was sent the film by my distributor. Why would you send it to a 19-year-old? Who said, you know, she's someone who does selfies and says, oh my God, look at my college dorm room. And she wrote a review on Emory. Everyone should go to read it. She didn't understand the film, has no knowledge, and she says, oh my God, this is the worst film I've seen. Now, I said, these are the people who are never going to make it because they are so unaware of what it takes to go and make a film. It's something that most people in their life will not be able to do if they're not part of the industry. Rather than saying, how did 2 brown women break in, make it, put it out there in a theater, and do this? She was more busy in the self-affirmation of, I am in a position today of power, though I've done nothing. And I can put paper to pen. So my message to everyone, it's so difficult. Don't believe anyone around you saying you can't do it. If you want to do it, go out and do it. You will only have to struggle, but that's life. It's exciting. Struggle. And don't be put down by anybody because your own peers will tell you it's impossible. Nothing is impossible if you want to do it. And that's why I say the story of the Rani. I mean, who at 29 wants to tie a son to her back, gallop into battle, take on a East India Company with just a sword in her hand while they've got guns? I mean, that's insanity. That's the spirit I rejoice in. And every time I'm feeling down, I say, if she can do it, you know what? Pick yourself up and do it.
Oh, that's amazing, Devika.
I don't know if I'm in any position to give advice. You know, it's interesting. I think finding your own power is... So I'm Gen Y, I guess. And the main difference, I read somewhere between... There are many differences between Gen Y and Gen Z, but we are the culprits of reading fake news and passing it on to our friends, whereas and being like, I read that, because we grew up understanding that news was news and just trusting that blindly. And I believe that Gen Z knows not to trust anything they read, and they're the ones who actually look at every headline and think, like, let me check if this is real prior to sending it to
I know, it's kind of
my
scary.
friends, right? And I am a total culprit of that. I have like a few times like, can
I
you
must be
believe?
Gen Z because I check everything. Who told me what? Let's check it.
But so our generation is learning now how to not spread fake news because we read things, we're like, oh my goodness, and we just send it, and then someone's like, that is fake. And I think that nature of being a little more careful of the things you read and the things you hear, and making your own mind about things is a very, very valuable one. And it's something that I would urge everyone to do, and urge Gen Z people to keep doing, because your own opinion and your own mindset is the only thing that's important. Because if you think about history, I mean, the kind of things that people, when under the influence of mass mentality, have done, it gets into very dangerous territory. And we're not far from that. And I was re-watching one of the episodes of Who is America by Sacha Baron Cohen, who's a genius. And he gets this restaurant critic to eat what he believes is human meat. He believes that this is meat from an 8-year-old young Chinese boy, okay? And he's at this very fancy restaurant, and, you know, they're all like, it's delicious, it's a delicacy, whatever. And he eats it, and he says it's delicious, and all this stuff. And that sketch and all of them really show what people can do when they're pushed by their surroundings, of everyone saying, yeah, no, it's okay, like, this is what we believe. It's all, I'm doing it, so you can do it. And so people can be pushed to doing crazy things, and it's not that far off to say you can turn someone into a cannibal. You should watch that episode if you haven't.
I will now.
Yeah, but it's just the importance of having your own thought and making up your own mind about things, and not being scared to disagree with other people, and having your own taste is really the most important thing. Because if you really stick to it, that's the only thing that you know, and you will find like-minded people somewhere down the line, even if it's not right at the start of it. So I don't know if that's
These are powerful words. No, these are really powerful words.
Thank you so much, Devika and Swati, for your work. Both of you are such a strong force for women empowerment in an industry that is predominantly white, male-dominated. And you've demonstrated through this film that we women can make a difference if we're brave enough to take a stand and advocate for the issues that truly matters to us. Keep up the good work. To our dear audience, thank you so much, guys, for tuning in. Make sure you check our next episode next Wednesday. Thank you so much for staying with us today. Don't forget to subscribe to our podcast so you don't miss out our next episodes. We have an incredible lineup of guests, so you're not going to want to miss it out. Also, make sure you check us out at BluntyW.com and follow us on social media at BluntyW to get your daily dose of inspiration and learn more about other stories of resilience and courage. See you soon.